ultimately, the biggest thing for fat loss is going to be a calorie deficit. Based on fairly irrefutable thermodynamics, we have to have a calorie deficit in order to lose weight. Though it's kind of an interchangeable definition. If somebody isn't losing weight, they are not in a calorie deficit. And if somebody isn't in a calorie deficit, they're not losing weight. Those two things are pretty interchangeable. We also, in order to aid that on a daily basis, we want to look at things like satiety, muscle mass preservation, because again, people probably don't want to come in losing muscle. We need to look at training performance, enjoyment, convenience, things like that that are going to help our clients stick to their nutrition guidelines in order to sustain that calorie deficit. On a weekly basis, we're kind of expanding on that theme of sustainability and adherence. Adherence and calorie deficit are kind of the umbrella terms here. A big part of weekly adherence is going to be things like training performance as well. Are they enjoying their time in the gym? Is it going to be helping to motivate them to continue with what they're doing? And then on a monthly basis as well, we want to look at continued weight loss and sustainability of that calorie deficit, adherence to that calorie deficit, things like that. So on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis, we can change a few different things depending on what kind of time frame we're looking at. So on a daily basis, what do we adjust? We adjust things like calorie intake on a per day basis. Of that calorie intake, we can look at the macronutrient breakdown, so what percentage of calories are coming from carbs, fat, protein, fiber, etc. We also need to look at food variety when it comes to what are our calories coming from. We also can then look at how often someone's eating. We can look at meal frequency. That can often play a part in successful fat loss when it comes to adherence to a particular diet. On a weekly basis, things we're looking at here is mostly linearity of calorie intake. And what I mean by linearity of calorie intake, a lot of you may be more familiar with the term carb cycling or calorie cycling. Those are the same sort of thing. So a linear calorie intake is the set calorie intake that you stick to across the course of the week. A non-linear calorie intake is a calorie intake that fluctuates on a day-by-day basis. And that can be useful in certain applications and certain contexts to increase adherence to a diet. On a monthly basis or longer, we can look at things like diet breaks and general adjustment of calorie intake in order to continue with that weight loss. So most of our clients we know will come to us looking to lose weight, but what they actually mean a lot of the time is I want to reduce the amount of body fat that I'm carrying. However, to investigate body fat, we've already discussed why that's probably not such a good idea. It's very imprecise, it's very inaccurate a lot of the time, and it's generally not great when it comes to tracking changes over time either. So using weight as a metric is generally a slightly more reliable way of going about things. As we discussed in part one, you can use all sorts of other metrics other than weight and body fat percentage. But for the sake of an example, I'm going to talk here about weight loss and not fat loss specifically. And I want to start with it's not debunking, but it's semi-debunking the 3,500 calorie per pound rule. A lot of you may have heard of this rule, whereby if you are in a 3,500 calorie deficit over the course of, it's usually a week, but could be any length of time, you will lose a pound of fat. On a mathematical level, that is true. There are 3,500 calories in 1 pound of fat. However, during a diet, you are very rarely losing exclusively fat. And as a result of that, this rule doesn't hold up particularly well. It's a useful heuristic to use for maybe some starting calculations for somebody to figure out potentially just how large a calorie surplus or deficit somebody is in over the course of a couple of weeks when you're setting up a new client. However, I'm going to show you a few examples of why it doesn't hold up so well all the time.